Good morning.
Good morning, that's right. I do this every month. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Of course you don't respond because I'm not saying the correct greeting. When we leave, I should say good afternoon then. So I hope everyone had a lovely Valentine's Day. And thank you for being here. We are still waiting for one panelist. So we just affirmed that he will arrive in the right and perfect time. And our Faith Forum topic today is, if God is love, what are you? Most faiths advocate love, compassion, and service. How does your faith do this in a practical way? Do they take an active stance? How do you personally serve your community? Isn't this truly the golden rule in action? And just by way of introduction, my name is Mitzi Linton. I'm the Vice President of the Board for the Arizona Interfaith Movement. And we hold these faith forums monthly, when we don't have other major events going on, so that it is an opportunity to learn more about individual faiths and members of our community. And you just lost. I did. Oh, there we go. And just to learn a little bit about each other. So our panelists today will have between 8 and 10. We're going to give them 10 in case our other panelist doesn't arrive. We can give them 10 minutes to speak on the topic. And after that, there'll be questions and answers from you, should you have any. And just before we start, I'd like to invite you to turn off or at least silence your cell phones, Dr. Paul. Thank you. Dr. Paul has the most wonderful, you know what, I'm going to use another one. Dr. Paul has the most wonderful cell phone ring, and we all feel like getting up and dancing when it turns on. It's some kind of Dixieland band, and he's like, no, I'm mortified now. Don't say anymore, please, Missy. So I'm going to introduce our first panelist this morning. And this is Jennifer Wheeler. And Jennifer is from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She was born and raised in McLean, Virginia, and she studied accounting at Brigham Young University, graduating with a bachelor's and master's in accounting. After having served a full-time mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Montreal, Canada. So that means you speak French. Yes, wonderful. So upon graduation, she worked for Arthur Anderson. And it was during this time that she met and married her husband, Quinn Wheeler. She and Quinn moved to Phoenix shortly after they were married, and they've lived here for over 20 years. Jennifer is now a full-time mother, and they have 4 children ranging in age from 11 to 18 years. She's an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and has responsibilities in public affairs for the church in the Metro Phoenix area. For further information, you can see mormon.org and justserve.org, and those are listed on our websites. So please help me give a warm welcome to Jennifer.
Thank you. So the question was, if God is love, what are we? And I think I can speak for my faith in saying that we believe we're the personification of God's love. I know there are so many people out there that feel unloved, unlovable, and as we reach out to them, we can give them a glimpse of God's love. And we do this in several ways. Well, first, I wanted to just share one passage from the New Testament. So this was when Jesus was teaching the people about when he came again and who would be saved. And he said, those of you that fed me when I was hungry and gave me something to drink when I was thirsty. I'm paraphrasing. And they said, well, when did we do that? When did we feed you? When did we clothe you? And he said, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. And so that really epitomizes how we feel about serving other people, that it's a way for us to show God and Jesus Christ how much we love them, and it also shows how much He loves each one of us, because He wants us to serve other people just as if we were serving Him. So that happens in our faith community in lots of different ways. So I will just give a brief summary, and if you have more questions, we can deal with that in the question and answer period. But it starts at a very young age. Our youth program, we have a boys' youth program and a girls' youth program for youth ages 12 to 18. And so before that, children are serving with their parents in different service activities. But in our youth program, there is a focus on service. So the weekly activities sometimes will include service projects. I know our congregation, with about maybe the youth from 20 other congregations, almost once a year goes to Maryvale, works with the city. The city selects a couple streets where houses are in disrepair, and the kids just work all day long. They paint, they weed, they garden, and that's just one example of some of the service that our youth will do. Our young men focus on, in addition to learning gospel principles about Jesus Christ, our youth program includes the Boy Scout program. So any of you that are familiar with that, many of our young men become Eagle Scouts. I got one Eagle Scout so far. I'm hoping my little guy makes it there too, but that includes a big service project included with that. And that can be anywhere in the community. The boys get to decide, and they're supposed to plan it. Their moms help a lot, but they're supposed to plan it and organize it and invite their friends. A lot of times our faith community shows up to help, and it's usually hundreds of hours of service that are involved in that project. And that's just another way to help members in the community. So our youth are focused on service at a young age in the hopes that they will look outside themselves. My oldest is currently serving in Seoul, Korea as a missionary, and I used to have to say to him, "You're the S-O-N, not the S-U-N." So those of you who have teenagers know that it's sort of all about them, and so by serving, that's a way for them, hopefully, to start not just seeing everything in terms of how it affects them, but looking at other people's needs. And then also within our faith community, we have a women's organization. It's actually the largest women's organization in the world. It's called the Relief Society. And the motto of the Relief Society is "Charity Never Faileth." And so all adult women in our church worldwide are part of this organization. And some of the goals of the organization are to increase faith and personal righteousness of women, strengthen families and homes, and help those in need. And so this women's organization is also focused on helping those in need. One program that we have within our faith community to help those within our faith community is a program called Visiting Teaching. And so any woman who will accept the responsibility will usually have a partner, and they will go visit 3 to 4 to 5 women in the church once a month. So our congregation is organized in such a way that our presiding leader of our church, we refer to him as the bishop, he also has a regular job. We believe in a lay ministry, so he's not paid for anything he does. So he works all day. Ours just happened to have his 7th child this weekend, or his wife did. So he has a lot of responsibilities. So it would be difficult for him to visit every member of our congregation every month. And so we, as members of the congregation, and there's a similar system within the men's organization, we visit each person. We try and make sure everyone gets visited every month, and sometimes it's just to sit there with them and listen. Sometimes they have needs, and we report back that, Sister so-and-so is really struggling employment-wise, or there's no food in their house, or whatever, and so that assistance can be given to them. And a lot of times it's just to cheer up someone who probably doesn't get many visits. They're lonely and insecure. It's a way for us to fellowship and also show love to them. And then beyond that, just beyond service within our community, we also have many programs that are church-wide that help people within and outside of our community. So one of the things we have is a welfare complex in Mesa, and these are throughout the United States. They're building one right now. They just barely started in Glendale. And there's several components to that. So one of the components is a thrift store. And the thrift store helps take someone who is sort of in the pre-employment stage, has never really had a job, and teach them those pre-employment skills like reliability, dependability, showing up, doing a full day's work, those kind of things. And while they're working, the thrift store is called Deseret Industries. While they're working at Deseret Industries, they can also participate in some other training that will give them a skill. So they have forklift operators, caregiving, phlebotomy, those kind of things that will help take them from a minimum wage position to where they can start getting in a path that will allow them to become independent and take care of themselves. And thereby, as you know, when people are not independent, they don't feel good about themselves. And so when you can bring someone from dependence to independence, they have a lot more peace in their life, and then they're able to go out and help other people. So the objective of all the welfare services within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is to create independence, to help people go from needing assistance to being able to take care of themselves. So also part of the welfare complex, there's what we call a bishop's storehouse, and it's like a food pantry. And so if someone within our faith community needed assistance, or even someone without our faith community, they would meet with a bishop within a geographic area. So our congregations are organized geographically, and so there's a bishop in charge of a certain geographic area. And he would talk to them about their situation, assess their needs, and then someone would literally go to their house, it's usually someone from Relief Society, and see how big their family is and what they needed, how much food they already had, and write out a food order that says this person for these next 2 weeks needs 5 pounds of chicken, 3 pounds of beef. And they're all staples, they're not prepackaged kind of things, beans, rice, that kind of stuff. And so then they could go, and the bishop might say to them, we'd like you, while you're at the bishop's storehouse, to work there for a couple hours and fill some orders so that they feel like they're making a contribution for what they're receiving and they feel good about it. And so that's one way that we help people in need with food within the community, but people outside the community also can use that service. And in addition, at these welfare complexes, there are usually an employment center, so to help take people who might be underemployed to greater employment, help find something that uses their skills better. And there's also all sorts of workshops about resume writing and interview skills so that people that need assistance can really better their station in life. And they have others. The people that work there and help them are usually retired members of our church that have agreed to serve at the welfare complex. So they do it without pay, and someone who might have been very successful in business is now retired and now volunteers in that capacity to help other people along the way and mentor them, and etc. And then, I'm not keeping track of time, but I'm almost done.
You're fine.
So one other thing I'd like to share about is that lately, the church has been trying to focus on really ministering to people's needs. Sometimes we'll have a congregation service activity and we'll go clean up a blighted area. And that's a service, and that, makes it look nicer, and probably people that go through that area appreciate it. But we're really trying to focus more on personally ministering to people, working with other members in the community, and really helping people. And so I'll pass these out later, but these are a flyer for a website called justserve.org. And what Just Serve does is it's sort of a depository where charities and other organizations, churches, government organizations can list service projects. So they might need 20 people to come serve food to the homeless. And they'll put any requirements there, like you need a background check, etc. And then they're listed by date, and they're listed by zip code, so you can type in your zip code. And then the flip side of that is that any organization, any church or National Honor Society or any of these groups that want to participate in service can then go there and figure out what works in their schedule, what interests them. Even an individual could say, well, I really feel like I can make better use of my time instead of wasting it on the computer like I tend to do sometimes, and serve other people. And so they can go and find something that meets their interest level and their time commitment, and then go actually help mentor a child or do after school homework or what have you. So that's just something that lately we're focusing on, and we're encouraging all the congregations to go there when someone needs to do an Eagle project and the 14-year-old boy can't figure out, what should I do? But this is an area they can go and have a whole list of ideas and organizations that really need service. And so that's just another area. And in addition to that, worldwide, our church is involved with a lot of humanitarian efforts, etc. So from a personal standpoint, one experience that I've had over the last couple of years that was through my Relief Society Association. You asked me earlier if I still speak French. Well, not super well, but a woman moved into our congregation, and our bishop said to me, she's a refugee, she's from Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo, she speaks French. Will you come with me when I meet her? And so he and his wife and I went and met her. And she had, I think her kids were probably like 5 and 7 then. And it was right before school started, and so as a mom with kids, I'm like, how is she ever going to register for school when she doesn't even speak English? And she doesn't speak Spanish, which, you know, most documents are in both languages. So she and I developed this friendship as I helped her with that, and we really developed this friendship. And she had already started working through Catholic Social Services on some paperwork to have her husband come over. It's a really tragic story, but in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a war broke out, and her home was stormed by militants. She was attacked, her husband was attacked. This was in the middle of the night, and and there were gunshots. In the morning, there was a man wrapped up, and everyone said that was her husband. And she was so traumatized, she just fled with the kids. He thought she had been killed, and so once she had gone through a refugee camp in Cameroon and made her way to the United States through some charitable organization, someone told her, you know, your husband's alive. So by the time I met her, they were in contact via phone and text. But she entered the country as a widow. So then there was a lot of paperwork to do to bring the husband over to make sure there was no fraud involved, to prove it was the husband. Well, she didn't have any documents, right? She fled her home. So I got to know her through this process, because what documents her husband was able to send over were all in French. So with the help of Google Translate, I've translated them, and then I have a friend who teaches French at Xavier. I'm like, can you make sure I didn't mess this up? So she helped me, and so this was a several-year process, but just this past Christmas, her husband came. She's since moved to Utah. We got to meet him, we went out to dinner. So it was really, it might seem like, oh yeah, I was helping her, but in a lot of ways she helped me, not just with my French. She did help me with my French, but we travel to Utah periodically. She's been up there about a year or two, and she is very poor, very, very poor. And one time, she knows I like peppermint patties. She had bought me a whole Costco-sized box of peppermint patties. And you know, a lot of us, when we give of our excess. So to know her financial state, and to know that she had spent money that she probably could have spent feeding her own family, you know, and so it was just so touching to me, the kinds of bonds that we can form when we serve other people, and the love that develops, and that's my way of circling back to that I think we really do feel God's love ourselves, and we help other people see it when we serve them and we help them. I just want to close with a quote. This was from a woman named Marjorie Pay Hinckley. Her husband was one of the prophets of our church who has since passed away. She said, "I don't want to drive up to the pearly gates in a shiny sports car wearing beautifully tailored clothes, my hair expertly coiffed, and with long, perfectly manicured fingernails. I want to drive up in a station wagon that has mud on the wheels from taking kids to scout camp. I want to be there with a smudge of peanut butter on my shirt from making sandwiches for sick neighbors' children. I want to be there with a little dirt under my fingernails from helping to weed someone's garden. I want to be there with children's sticky kisses on my cheeks and the tears of a friend on my shoulder. I want the Lord to know I was here and that I really lived." And to me, that epitomizes our purpose on the earth, especially those of us that worship God, that we are here to wear out our lives serving Him. So.
Lisa, that was, not Lisa, Jennifer, that was amazing. That was so beautiful. I'm not thinking right because your story really touched me very deeply. And that's exactly right. When we get to serve, what an experience and what a blessing it is, not only for the one who's receiving it, but most of all for us. And you really, really touched on the heart of that. So thank you. I know that there are a lot of hearts that were touched by your speaking today. Thank you so much. Ah, deep breath. I saw Paul also getting very, very emotional, and by your story, it really, just really touched us. Another deep breath. We're moving on to Lisa Kaplan, Jewish, who currently serves as the Director of Planning, Allocations, and Organization Relations for the Jewish Federation of Greater Phoenix. She recently staffed a federation study to determine senior needs in the Jewish community. She is a graduate of Hebrew Union College and the University of Southern California with a master's degree in Jewish communal service and public administration. Lisa has spent her entire career serving the Jewish community. She's also worked in Los Angeles, Las Vegas, New Orleans, Philadelphia, but she's very happy to be back in Phoenix, which is her childhood home. And Lisa is coming to us a little different today because she's coming from an organization. I wanted to reach out in our faith forums and start bringing in people too who represent in organizations what they're doing. They're applying their faith through working with an organization. And so we're very, very happy to have Lisa Kaplan with us today. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Sorry. So I apologize if I look down at my phone. I actually have the questions on my phone, so I'm not getting text messages or anything while I'm talking to you. I'm actually looking at the questions that I'm supposed to be talking about. So yes, sorry, I work in the Jewish community here in Phoenix, Greater Phoenix. Our offices are actually in Scottsdale. And I'm here to talk a little bit about what it means to be someone who spends their life serving a community, which is at the same time a wonderful thing and always a challenge. And also talk to you a little bit about what we as a Jewish community believe and do in terms of what we call tzedakah, justice, and making our community a good place for people who have needs, and recognizing that not everyone has the same things and need the same things. The Jewish community here in Phoenix is estimated to be around 100,000 Jews at this point. When I was growing up here in the 70s, it was around 20,000, so it has grown exponentially in the last 30 years. And that's left this community, I think, with a lot of growing pains, because that kind of growth is not, it doesn't come very often into communities. If you look at other communities, Los Angeles or San Francisco, which are the two Western communities that I would say would be most similar to Phoenix, and they're not very similar at all. Those communities, had Jews a significant Jewish population in those communities, starting from the gold rush, right? Starting from Phoenix, there were Jews here from the beginning of the, before the state, but not that many. So we think back in the 50s and 60s, there were probably around 10,000 Jews here. So it's changed a lot. The current Jewish community, excuse me, is very committed to service, and the notion, one of the key notions of the Jewish religion is this notion of tikkun olam, perfecting the world. And in terms of how do we perfect the world, we do it in many different ways, but one is that we have our own social service system that we set up in most communities where we live in the United States. That system doesn't just serve Jews, it serves anyone who comes to it, but it was set up in the 1880s to serve the hundreds of thousands of Jews that were emigrating from Eastern Europe to primarily at that point the East Coast, but then they were dispersing from there throughout the country. So the first Jewish organizations you see popping up at that time were Jewish organizations that were dealing with immigrants and helping them adjust to this new world. And they did a phenomenal job at that. Even those same organizations are still in business today. They're still doing what they do, and they're doing it for a different immigrant population. Because we're an immigrant community, and we understand the importance of welcoming people and making that transition easier. We understand that. I mean, a lot of people understand it, but I think from our historical perspective, we've been the stranger in many strange lands, and when we came to this land, we promised this country that we would take care of ourselves, and so we did. And we did until, we still do, but as government has come in and taken over more and more of those responsibilities, and the needs have gotten to be so great across the board, a lot of our organizations are taking, millions and millions of dollars from the federal government to provide the services that we do to the entire community. An example of that would be our Jewish Family and Children's Services Agency here in Phoenix is the largest provider of foster care services in the state of Arizona. And they do only family reconciliation. They don't place kids in homes. So they're the key provider of that service in the state. And at the same time, they're serving the Jewish community. They're serving our seniors with a senior center. They're serving our seniors with social workers who can do case management and make sure that they're getting their needs met. If they're not getting their needs met, we have funds that are available to help them get their needs met. And when we assess that they need more than what can be provided with them staying in their homes, we have alternatives for that as well. But it's not just about people in need, it's about maintaining and strengthening the Jewish community. And so we also support a bunch of Jewish day schools, parochial schools, and community centers, the Jewish Student Center on the ASU campus, a center for people with special needs, and a myriad of other individual programs around the city of Phoenix that help people in need, whether they're looking for jobs or they are homeless or need food. There is a place for them to go. All I have to do is pick up the phone and call. Usually they call JFCS, occasionally they call me, and I can usually tell them where they need to go to get what they need. Our organization, the organization I work for, is primarily a fundraising organization. We go into the Jewish community and ask people for money to support these services, and then we give out the money to the organizations. I personally am not the fundraiser, I'm the one who gives out the money, but I have been a fundraiser for Jewish federations before, and it really is God's work. We are out there every day in the trenches, as they say, trying to convince people that it's worth it for them to donate and help other people live better lives. And that's always a challenge, but it is a blessing as well. What else? I guess I would add, just want to add in terms of international I think the Jewish community in the United States in the early 1900s felt that we were the most well-off Jewish community in the world. It's true. We had a responsibility to help other Jews in other communities that were being persecuted, and we created an organization called the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, and they have turned themselves into a worldwide relief organization, which we support, with about 10% of the overall funds that we raise go to them. And they are in Africa, they are in, right now, France, unfortunately, because whoever thought we would need to be doing relief work in France. They are in, right now, the Ukraine, and they are moving people out of eastern Ukraine into safe centers throughout the region, and they are also maintaining the services that they've been providing in the former Soviet Union, in the Ukraine, since the fall of the Soviet Union. They created a countrywide system of what they call Hesed, wellness centers, for mostly seniors, and from that they developed a movement which is also providing education and camps to the kids in the former Soviet Union, allowing them to relearn their Jewish identity, which a lot of them had lost. So that's what we do, that's what I do. I came to this field from college, where I was very active in government and activism, different kinds of activism. If you could get arrested for it, activist-wise, I did it in college. But it was something that I felt really strongly about, and when I looked to leave college and decide what I wanted to do with my life, I couldn't think of anything I would rather do than work to make the world a better place every single day. And I get to do that. And sometimes I forget that that's what I'm doing because I'm at my computer sending emails for 6 hours, but that's what I'm doing. And so I guess speaking to you is a good reminder of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, thank you so much for all that you are doing to make the world a better place, and also for enlightening us about all the services that are provided that are open to really to anyone. They're not just. That's what really inspired me about having Lisa as a speaker, that these services, and also Jennifer, that these services aren't just for their faith communities. They're open to all of us. We don't know often about what's actually happening in our communities. So I thought it would be wonderful to hear about that. So thank you again. Our next speaker is Ernie Bruss, who's from the Baha'i faith tradition. And Ernie serves as one of our board members for Arizona Interfaith Movement. He wrote and produced talks and audiovisual programs entitled Hawaii, How the Diversity of the Faith is Reflected in the Beauty of the Races in Hawaii. What is Race? Diversity and Beauty of the Human Family. Baha'i World Faith, showing the beauty of the earth and the unity of its peoples. And Ernie was inspired to do those by a world trip that he took. He also wrote Out of the Clay of Love, a program based on the spiritual truths inherent in every religion, and many others which can be shared. If you would like to see any of those talks or audiovisual programs, just see Ernie afterwards and he'll be happy to share those with you, or a link to how to get more information on them. The Baha'i Center has many outreach programs for the community, and I'm really happy to invite us all to welcome Bernie to share some of those outreach programs with us.
Thank you, President. My apologies in that I've kind of had one of these awful flus going around and didn't perhaps respond to one of the things we were supposed to supply was a bio of what we were going to talk about. Well, I was kind of out of it, so I just sent her a note and said, just use what you've got on file. So I assume that's what you had on file. Right. So thank you very much. It's interesting in that there's, in the Baha'i faith, there are no clergy. There's people are not with titles. We do have an administrative system that we use, but we are actually, as Baha'is, all equal. We are not, we don't have paid clergy. We don't have any kind of positions that would qualify for saying, well, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I do this, and this. We are all individuals, so we don't normally have a lot of those kind of things on our resume, if you will. It's an interesting subject today about God is love, because there's let me share just a little bit on some things that come from the Baha'i writings about that very subject. Abdul Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, talked about that love in the sense that, in the West we've kind of come to this romantic idea of what love basically is, and then we've slowly expanded it maybe to a little bit more family and friends and that sort of thing. But when put in the perspective of love is that universal force that creates the cohesion and everything that occurs in the whole universe, even including gravity, because these are all forces of attraction that bring us together, and they're part of the essential truth of the fact that our Creator is the source of all that love and permeates absolutely from the smallest subatomic particle to the largest planets in the universe itself. And so, and even science has confirmed some of these things, that there is an impact between when I sneeze here, something happens to that atom out there in that farthest planet. There is some relationship to all of this. So when we say that God is love, and we talk about reaching out to do things with our fellow men, one of the statements in Baha'i writings is that God says, if you love me, serve your fellow man. So it is an imperative for us to do that as an expression of our relationship to our Creator. One of the things also that's, if everything is absolutely related, then or maybe I should say, we look at the world and we say, well, if everything is based on love, how come we're in the pits and so many bad things are going on? And so even with this inherent relationship that everything has within itself, one of the very unique things that happens, and this was also from the writings, that, our Creator gave us free will choice. We are the only entity within all of creation that we can choose. We can follow a physical, material lifestyle, or we can follow a more spiritual one. And it's purely up to us to decide. We believe that we are actually spiritual beings in a human form. We're not human beings with a spiritual inclination. That puts a very different emphasis on how we live our lives. So with that in mind, we talk about some of the things that we do. The basic mission, if you will, it's not really stated that way, but is to raise the awareness, the level of spirituality in the world. And so we have outreach programs that are of service that try to address that issue, not to get them to join the Baha'i faith. In fact, we are even told that we cannot proselytize. People join us because they want to. But that's, since all of the major religions of the world are part of our spiritual heritage, and obviously we all feel that there's only one creator, so why is there more than one religion? Well, the process, as we understand it, is that over time, as man, which we evolved not only physically, but also spiritually, and had an ability to understand more, various manifestations came into the world, prophets who brought and founded the religions that were appropriate for those people, their level of understanding at that time in different parts of the world. Now, the Baha'i faith is the second most worldwide religion behind Christianity, which is kind of interesting. We're not near as large, and there's others that are much larger than we are. We just happen to have wandered off into more places than many of the others. So we do have we touch all the parts of the world. And some of the current things that are happening is we have some focus on trying to get more things going at the neighborhood level. One is that children's classes, because of we feel like there needs to be a lot more going on in the levels of character development and spiritual learning, that not religious learning, spiritual learning, in the younger children. The next level is our outreach program. This is probably where we are most successful. It's what we call junior youth. There is, that's that age group we identify as 11 to 15. You know, they're kind of in that area where they're not children anymore, they're not really youth yet. It's a very formative time, and they've been kind of left to themselves, and oftentimes are ending up then as the kind of youth that we see as very troubled. And this junior youth program is for empowerment. It's for them to be able to have more self-worth, to understand who and what they are, and what they have and what they can give, and how to participate in community service. And this is a worldwide program. The youth, these junior youth, have turned into some of the most wonderful servants of their communities and their neighborhoods. And we've had, it's very gratifying to have parents come and say, I don't know who this child is. It's nothing like the child that started out here. It started a few months ago in your program. So it really is, it gives them a lot of focus. And the goals and ideals, they have to develop. We're there to facilitate the program, but they really have to step up and find ways in which they can be of service. So that helps a lot. We also are reaching out in neighborhood programs with establishing devotionals. And the devotionals are primarily, again, meant to help raise the spiritual level of, in this case, in our neighborhoods. The unity that's ever to occur in the world has to start at the very lowest level, the family level. And of course, if you don't have family unity, you're going to have a hard time having neighborhood unity, or community unity, or town unity, or national unity, or world unity. And until we begin to realize that the problems that the world is facing, we keep throwing material, trying to solve those problems materially, but they're underlying, in all cases, if you really go and look, the problems are spiritual. And we're not going to get a permanent solution to the world's problems until we address those. And so that's why we feel that it is a very important aspect of what we do in our outreach program, is that we help raise this spiritual awareness. And it doesn't matter what faith group you might be in. We're all in that same boat, and we all are hoping to go in the same direction. We would just like to have more people doing it. The faith is also very much involved with world organizations, both political and non-governmental. We're an NGO at the United Nations. We've actually been asked to come in because there's a lot in the writings about the functioning of communities, educational programs, and we have been invited by a number of national governments to come in and consult with them on some of their programs to find ways and means that are are able to deal with the problems that they're having in those communities. So we have programs in social and economic development that are worldwide. Our World Center is on the slopes of Mount Carmel in Haifa.
Been there.
And our granddaughter, I was hoping she would be here today because she just returned from a conference. She is very active in helping train facilitators for this junior youth program in the West. And she was asked to come to the World Center in Haifa to assist with some consultation on this program as it's developing in other parts of the world. She is the mother of our first two great-grandchildren, and they are only 3.5 months old, and she took them from here on the plane to Haifa, Israel. She just got back yesterday, and she's just a little too tired, and the twins are a little too cranky. She felt like that she just couldn't squeeze it in today after having made that enormous effort. But we're really glad to have her back. Those are some of the things that the Baha'is are involved in, and if you have any questions, then of course we'd love to talk more about them. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ernie, and we send blessings to your granddaughter and to your great-grandchildren. My
Twins,
goodness.
boy and a girl.
Wow, that's awesome. So our last panelist obviously didn't arrive, so we just affirmed that all is well with him, and that it was either a miscommunication or something else came up for him, and just affirmed that he will be able to come and share another time instead. And he was actually from an organization which I really wanted us to hear about today, so we'll put them on the list for another time. But now it is time for you to ask any questions. Let's in this first round keep